Earlier in 2021, NSUN ran our side-by-side programme, offering grants of £500 to peer support, mutual aid or self-help groups benefiting people and communities who live with mental ill health, trauma and distress in England and Wales. Since then, we've been working with grantees to understand what resources and funding grassroots groups need to thrive. I asked some of our grantees, when you're applying for funding, what are some red flags that make you choose not to apply?
Well, to be quite honest with you, this was the first time that we looked for funding because I think we always felt that our organisation wouldn't qualify for anything. So I think the idea of actually applying therefore meant that we were completely negative about what could be available for us out there.
Sometimes I get very frustrated and annoyed that for very small pots of funding, the criteria is so overwhelming and can be annoying. So it's like £500, £250, and the criteria is long as my arm. I mean, I've had a small amount of funding from a local authority, and the amount of bureaucracy that came with it, it was enough for me to never apply again. They wanted us to put on every form, every leaflet, everything, their logo, and then they wanted us to give names and details of people that we have engaged with, which is a GDPR breachment. I'm in favor of monitoring evaluation. I'm in favor of keeping records, but they've got to match the level of funding. You can't expect a £250 funding and the amount of bureaucracy that you would expect for a £10,000 project.
One of the things that really puts me off applying is a mega long application form. We are a really, really small charity, and it's just not feasible for me as a volunteer, as someone working full time, to have to just explain everything in a real amount of depth.
My biggest red flag is if it's not what our vision and mission and core purpose is about, then we're not going to do it. I do look for that alignment.
Top one for me is any funding offer that says I have to be monitoring and reporting people that have no recourse to public funds, because that was my background. That's the background of most of our beneficiaries. They have no recourse to public funds. Being asked to be the one to apply for funding that excludes them would be meaning that I wouldn't be serving literally 99% of our beneficiaries. So that's the top one.
One of the reasons why I don't apply is I fear a level of judgment on the work that we do. It almost feels like X Factor, but for grassroots organizations.
The most daunting thing of all is all the form filling. And then even more daunting was setting up a bank account.
If there are too many questions on an application form, it's difficult. I mean, the time to just sit down and fill that in, each one of those asking for 300, 600, 500 words, and you're thinking, where am I getting those words? I don't even know what to do.
I look at accessibility in terms of how accessible have we made the process to be able to get the funding? Because, with funding, it's never as simple as you apply and then you get the funding. It's like going through different rounds and different mechanisms. And that for me is quite challenging because we're quite time strapped. We're low on resource, we're low on funding, we're low on everything you can pretty much imagine that you can be low on. We're low on that. So for me, the biggest concern is how time consuming and how accessible is the process for this funding.
Funding that is usually excluding Black and minority groups. And you can read through, between the lines, and you know that this fund will not cover my organization.
I will always go to our partner organizations. So someone like Turkey, someone like Voices of Color, Spark & Co, just within our sphere. And I will go and ask them their experiences and their view on the funder itself. And that to me is probably one of the biggest thing that guides as to whether I apply for the funding or not.
Organizations that say they don't fund core funds, although I don't avoid them, it's a red flag for me because I don't know of any organization that survives on fumes.
So you're a funder working in the area of mental health, and you're wondering why more grassroots groups don't apply. It might be because groups are seeing disproportionate monitoring requirements or a complicated application process that doesn't feel welcoming. Or they may be looking for funders who offer core funding for their activities and who have a reputation for reaching out to, working productively with, and sharing power with marginalised groups.